The stars had always been beautiful to the people of Earth. Children looked up at night and dreamed of traveling among them. Scientists spent their lives studying their light. Poets wrote songs about their mystery. But on that terrible morning, the stars became a nightmare. 500 warships appeared in the sky above Earth. They came from the Kellan Dominion, a brutal empire that had conquered 3 galaxies. The Kellan had crushed thousands of civilizations. They had turned entire planets into dust. And now, they had come for humanity. Admiral Vorik stood on the bridge of his massive flagship. He was tall, with gray skin, and 4 eyes that glowed with cruel intelligence. He had led extinction fleets for 200 years. He had never failed. "Begin the first wave," he ordered. His voice was calm, almost bored. Earth was just another primitive world to destroy. The Kellan warships fired. Beams of terrible energy rained down from the sky. Earth's defense satellites exploded one by one. The planetary shield, humanity's greatest achievement, shattered like glass. In less than 3 hours, every military station in orbit was gone. On Earth, sirens screamed in every city. People ran through the streets, looking for shelter that did not exist. Mothers held their children. Soldiers stood at their posts, knowing they could do nothing. The world's leaders gathered in emergency bunkers, their faces pale with fear. In Seoul, President Yoon Park addressed the world. She was 53 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. But her voice did not shake as she spoke to 7 billion frightened souls. "We have faced darkness before," she said. "We have survived wars, diseases, and disasters. We will face this enemy together. We will not surrender. We will not give up hope." But even as she spoke, she knew the truth. Humanity had nothing left to fight with. Their fleet was destroyed. Their weapons were useless against the Kellan technology. They could only wait for death. In the underground command center beneath Seoul, military officers worked desperately to find any solution. Admiral Jin Dae, the highest-ranking officer left alive, stared at screens showing the enemy fleet. His hands were shaking, but his mind was still working. "There must be something," he whispered. "Any ship, any weapon, anything at all." Lieutenant Tae Kim sat at his communication station. He was 28 years old, with a thin face and quick eyes. His job was to monitor all signals coming to Earth. For the past 3 hours, he had heard nothing but screams and static. Then something changed. A new signal appeared on his screen. It was weak, coming from the dark side of the moon. Tae adjusted his equipment, trying to make it clearer. The signal was strange. It used a frequency that humanity had stopped using over 300 years ago. Sir Tae called out, his voice shaking. "I'm receiving something." Admiral Jin walked over to his station. "What is it?" "A transmission. It's using old codes. Very old." Tae worked his controls. The static slowly cleared. And then a voice came through, a woman's voice, speaking Korean with an accent that sounded ancient. "This is the HSS Baidu. We are returning." "Repeat, this is the HSS Baidu. We're coming home." The room fell silent. Every officer stopped moving. Admiral Jin's face went white. "That's impossible," he whispered. The HSS Baidu was a legend. It was humanity's first deep space exploration vessel. Launched in 2247, the ship had carried 90 crew members into the unknown, searching for new worlds. It had entered a strange wormhole near the edge of the solar system and vanished. For 312 years, it had been listed as destroyed. Every crew member was declared dead. Now it was calling home. "Respond," Admiral Jin ordered. "Respond immediately." Tae's fingers flew across his controls. "HSS Baidu. This is Seoul Command. Please confirm your identity. Please confirm." The seconds passed like hours. Then the voice came again. "Seoul Command. This is Captain Han Suri of the HSS Baidu. We have been traveling for a very long time. We detected distress signals from Earth. What is happening?" Admiral Jin grabbed the microphone himself. "Captain Han, Earth is under attack. An alien fleet of 500 warships is preparing to destroy us. We have no defenses left. We have nothing." There was a pause. When Captain Han spoke again, her voice was harder, colder. "We are coming. Do not lose hope." The transmission ended. Around the world, people watched their screens in confusion. The news spread faster than anyone could control it. The Baekdu was back. A ship lost for 3 centuries was returning. Some people laughed, thinking it was a joke. Others cried, believing it was a miracle. In orbit, Admiral Vorik received reports about the mysterious signal. He did not care. One ancient ship meant nothing against his fleet. "Ignore it," he commanded. "Continue preparing the second wave. I want this planet cleansed within 24 hours." His officers obeyed without question. They had destroyed civilizations with fleets of thousands. They had faced enemies with technology far beyond humanity's level. One primitive frigate from the past was not even worth considering. But deep in the shadows of the moon, something was moving. The HSS Baekdu emerged slowly into the light. It was a small ship, only 400 meters long. Its hull was covered with scars, burns, and strange patterns that seemed to move when looked at directly. It was old. It was battered. It looked like it should have fallen apart centuries ago, yet it moved with purpose. Heading straight toward Earth, straight toward the enemy fleet. On the bridge, Captain Han Suri stood at the center of her command. She was a woman who looked 40 years old, though she had been born over 350 years ago. Her uniform was faded and patched. Her eyes held memories of things no human should have seen. Around her, 87 crew members worked at their stations. They had aged only 5 years during their long journey. Time worked differently where they had been. They had traveled through places that had no names, fought enemies that existed outside of reality, and learned secrets that ancient civilizations had died protecting. They had become something new, something humanity had never imagined. Captain Han looked at the distant blue marble of Earth through her view screen. Her home. The home she thought she would never see again.
"Oh," and she said quietly.
"Prepare for combat." The Baekdu accelerated toward the enemy fleet. 1 ship against 500. The battle for Earth was about to begin. The wreckage of 10 cruisers drifted through space, where there should have been no wreckage at all. The Baekdu had erased 3 ships completely from existence. The other 7 had been torn apart by weapons that did not follow the laws of physics. Pieces of metal floated in the void, cold and dead. Carrying the bodies of thousands of Kellan soldiers, Admiral Vorik stood frozen on his bridge. His officers stared at their screens in disbelief. The Kellan had conquered 3 galaxies. They had faced enemies with technology far beyond their own. They had always won through numbers, through strength, through the simple truth that nothing could stand against 500 warships. But they had never seen anything disappear from reality before. "Report," Vorik commanded, his voice harder than before. "What happened to those ships?" His science officer's hands were shaking as he studied the readings. "Admiral, I cannot explain it." The 3 vessels did not explode. They did not break apart. They simply ceased to exist. Our sensors cannot find any trace of them, not even atoms. It is as if they were removed from the universe itself. Vorik's 4 eyes narrowed. He had lived for over 300 years. He had seen weapons that cracked planets, shields that stopped stars, ships that moved faster than light, but he had never heard of anything that could erase matter from existence. "That ship," he said slowly. "It came from somewhere outside normal space. We must destroy it before it gets closer." He turned to his tactical officer. "All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel. I want every weapon in this fleet aimed at that target. Nothing survives." 490 warships turned their weapons toward the Baekdu. The small frigate hung in space, silent and patient, waiting for the attack. On the Baekdu's bridge, Captain Han watched the enemy fleet reorganize. The readings on her screens showed the massive amount of energy building up across the Kellan formation. They were about to fire everything they had. Captain Ho Jin reported from his weapon station. "The enemy fleet is preparing a coordinated strike. Estimated firepower is enough to destroy a small planet." "Shields?" Han asked. "Wu Bin answered from engineering. The dimensional barriers are holding. I can reflect most of the incoming fire back at them, but it will drain our reserves. We cannot do it more than 3 times. Han nodded. She had expected this. The Kellen were doing exactly what every empire did when faced with something they did not understand. They were trying to overwhelm it with raw power. It was a strategy that worked against normal enemies. But the Baekdu was not normal, Han said. When they fire, shift us across the 3rd plane. Let them hit empty space. Mina Yun's distant eyes focused briefly. Her mind was operating on levels that normal humans could not comprehend. She saw the universe as layers, like pages in a book. Moving the ship between those pages was as natural to her as walking. Understood, Captain. Ready to shift on your command? The Kellen fleet fired. 500 beams of light erupted from the warships. Each beam carried enough energy to vaporize a city. Together, they could have burned through the core of a planet. They all converged on the Baekdu, creating a sphere of destruction that lit up the darkness of space. On Earth, people watching thought the fight was over. They saw the tiny ship disappear in a ball of fire. They screamed. They cried. They thought their last hope had been destroyed. But when the light faded, the Baekdu was gone, not destroyed. Simply gone. Admiral Vorik leaned forward. Where is it? Find that ship? His sensors could not locate the Baekdu. It had vanished from normal space completely. For 3 long seconds, the Kellen fleet searched desperately for their target. Then the Baekdu reappeared directly behind Vorik's flagship. Fire, Captain Han ordered. Ho Jin's weapons struck the massive ship from point-blank range. The Kellen flagship's shields, designed to stop attacks from kilometers away, could not react in time. Beams of energy that existed in multiple dimensions at once tore through the hull. Explosions rippled across the giant vessel. Vorik was thrown to the floor as his ship shook. Alarms screamed around him. Officers shouted damage reports that he could barely hear. Engine section destroyed. We are losing power. Hull breach on decks 40 through 60. Fire in the weapons bay. Vorik pushed himself up and stared at the view screen. The small human ship was flying away from his crippled flagship, moving toward the rest of his fleet. It was not trying to escape. It was hunting. Ships. Vorik screamed into his communicator. Attack from all directions. Surround it. Do not let it disappear again. The Kellen fleet tried to follow his orders. Ships moved to surround the Baekdu, creating a sphere of warships with no escape route. If the human vessel tried to run, it would fly straight into enemy fire. But the Baekdu did not try to run. It charged straight into the center of the enemy formation. Captain Han stood at the center of her bridge, perfectly calm. Around her, the ship moved in ways that should have been impossible. Mina shifted them through dimensional planes, making them appear and disappear across normal space. Ho Jin fired weapons in all directions, each shot aimed with perfect precision. Wu Bin managed the impossible reactor. Pulling power from pockets of reality that existed outside the universe, the Kellen ships tried to fight back. They fired thousands of weapons at the BU-2. But the small frigate was never where their sensor said it was. It flickered like a ghost, solid one moment and transparent the next. Shots that should have hit passed through empty air. Shields that should have protected warships failed against attacks that came from inside them. 20 ships fell in the first minute. On Earth, Lieutenant Tae Kim watched the battle through satellite feeds. His hands were shaking. He had studied military history, had seen recordings of great battles from humanity's past. Nothing compared to what he was watching now. The Beastu was dancing through the enemy fleet like death itself. It moved in patterns that hurt his eyes to follow. It struck ships that should have been out of range. It survived attacks that should have destroyed it 100 times over. What are they? He whispered. Admiral Jin stood beside him, his face gray. They are us, he said quietly. They are what we could have become if we had been thrown into the darkness and forced to survive. Die. Looked at the Admiral. Could we have become that? Jin was silent for a long moment. I hope we never have to find out. On the Baidu, the crew continued their deadly work. Arasung monitored enemy communications, feeding information to her crewmates. She could hear the Kellen officers screaming in confusion and fear. She could hear their commanders trying to organize a retreat that kept falling apart. "Captain," she reported, "the enemy fleet is breaking formation. Many ships are trying to fall back." Han nodded. "They are learning fear. Good, but we cannot let them run. If any of them escape, they will come back with more ships." She looked at her weapons officer. "Ho-Jin, target their engine sections. Cripple as many as you can." Ho-Jin's glowing eyes scanned the enemy fleet. His enhanced mind calculated distances, trajectories, and dimensional angles in milliseconds. "Understood, Captain." The Baekdu's weapons fired in rapid succession. Beams of light that existed across multiple dimensions struck Kellen warships throughout the formation. Engines exploded. Ships went dark. The retreat became a disaster as vessels crashed into each other or drifted helplessly into the path of their allies. Admiral Vorik watched his fleet being destroyed. His flagship was crippled, barely holding together. Around him, his great armada was falling apart. 500 warships, the pride of the Kellen Dominion, were being torn apart by a single ancient frigate. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" There was no answer. The Kellen had conquered 3 galaxies because they believed the universe followed rules they understood. They believed power was measured in ships and weapons. They believed nothing could stand against their might. They had been wrong. The ghost ship continued its hunt, and the Kellen fleet burned around it. The battle had lasted 11 hours. When it finally ended, 487 Kellen warships drifted as wreckage through the space around Earth. The survivors, 13 vessels carrying wounded soldiers and broken pride, fled toward the edge of the solar system. They would carry tales of the ghost ship back to their empire, tales that would spread fear through 3 galaxies. On Earth, people emerged from their shelters and looked up at the sky. The burning lights of the enemy fleet were fading. The alien armada that had come to erase humanity was gone. They were alive. Against all odds, against all logic, they were alive in soul. President Una Park stood in the command center, tears running down her face. Around her, officers were cheering, embracing, crying with relief. The world was celebrating. Every city, every nation, every corner of the planet erupted in joy. But Admiral Jinde was not celebrating. He was staring at his screens, watching the Baekdu drift slowly through the wreckage of the Kellen fleet. The ship that had saved humanity was moving toward Earth, but something was wrong. Lieutenant Tae-Jin said quietly, "Contact the Baekdu. I need to speak with Captain Han." Now. Tae worked his controls with shaking hands. The communication link was weak, filled with static. When Captain Han's image appeared on the screen, Jin felt his heart sink. She looked tired. Not the normal tiredness of battle, but something deeper. Something final. Behind her, the bridge of the Baekdu was dark. Warning lights flashed across damaged consoles. Several crew members were slumped at their stations, unmoving. Admiral Jin Han said. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "Is Earth safe?" "Yes," Jin replied. "Thanks to you. The enemy fleet is destroyed. The survivors are fleeing. You saved us all." Han smiled. It was a gentle smile, filled with peace. "Good. That is all we wanted." Jin leaned forward. "Captain, what is your status? Do you need assistance? We can send rescue ships." There was a long pause. Han looked around at her bridge, at her crew, at the family she had led through 3 centuries of darkness. "We will not need rescue, Admiral." Her voice was calm, accepting. "The reactor that powered our ship drew energy from places outside normal space. It was never meant to operate this long. We pushed it beyond its limits to win this battle." She turned back to face the screen. "It is failing now. In a few hours, it will go cold. And when it does, the things it kept stable will come apart." Jin felt cold. "You mean the ship will explode?" "No," Han shook her head. "We will simply stop. The dimensional energies that kept us alive, that let us move between realities, that powered our weapons. They are fading. When they are gone, we will fade with them." President Yuna had moved to stand beside Jin. She had heard everything. Her eyes were wide with grief. "Is there nothing we can do?" Yuna asked. "We owe you everything. There must be something." Han's smile grew warmer. "You can live, President. You can rebuild. You can look up at the stars and know that humanity has a future. That is all we ever wanted." On the Baekdu's bridge, the crew gathered around their captain. Ho-Jin stood at her right side, his glowing eyes dimming as the technology that enhanced him lost power. Mina-Yun was at her left, her distant gaze finally focusing on the present moment. Wu-Bin had left engineering to join them, his scarred hands steady despite everything. Arasung stood at her communications station, keeping the channel to Earth open until the end. They did not speak. They did not need to. They had said everything that needed to be said over 300 years of shared suffering and survival, Lieutenant. Tay watched them through the view screen. He had spent his career monitoring signals from space, hoping to hear something meaningful from the stars. Now he was watching heroes prepare to die. "Can you tell me," he said suddenly, his voice breaking, "what it was like out there? In the void?" Captain Han considered the question. "It was dark," she said slowly. "Darker than anything you can imagine. There were things in that darkness that wanted to destroy us. Wanted to consume us. Wanted to turn us into something that was no longer human." She paused, remembering nightmares that would never leave her. Stars being born, galaxies colliding in slow motion over millions of years. Creatures made of pure light dancing in the spaces between dimensions. The universe is full of horrors, Lieutenant, but it is also full of wonders. Mina spoke up, her voice dreamy. "I saw the end of time once. A place where all energy had faded and nothing moved. It was the loneliest thing I have ever seen. But even there, in that final darkness, there was a kind of peace." Ho-Jin's fading eyes looked toward Earth on the view screen. "I lost my humanity piece by piece out there. I replaced my eyes with technology from a dead civilization. I put machines in my brain to think faster, fight harder, but every piece I replaced I did for them." He gestured at his crewmates. "For my family, I would do it again." Wu-Bin placed a hand on the wall of his ship. "She kept us alive," he said, speaking of the Baidu as if it were a person. "When we were frozen in the void between galaxies, when creatures tried to tear through our hull, when we thought we would never see home again, she protected us. Now she is tired. She deserves to rest." Arasung kept her hands on her console, maintaining the connection to Earth. "I want them to remember us," she said quietly. "Not as heroes. Not as legends. Just as people who loved their home enough to fight for it." Captain Han nodded. "They will remember. Humans always remember." The Baekdu drifted into Earth's orbit. Its lights were growing dimmer. The strange patterns on its hull were fading. The impossible reactor that had powered it across dimensions was finally going cold. On the planet below, billions of people watched the ship that had saved them. They did not fully understand what was happening, but they sensed the weight of the moment. Church bells rang. Temples held silent prayers. People gathered in the streets and looked up at the sky. President Yuna addressed the world one final time. Her voice was steady, though tears streamed down her face. "The crew of the Baekdu has given us everything. They were lost for 300 years. They suffered horrors we cannot imagine. And when they finally found their way home, they found us in danger. Without hesitation, they gave their lives to protect us." She paused, gathering strength. "We will never forget them. Their names will be carved into monuments. Their stories will be told to our children and our children's children. As long as humanity exists, we will remember the 87 souls who came from the darkness to save us." On the Baekdu, Captain Han heard the broadcast. She smiled and looked at her crew. "They will remember us," she said. "But that is not why we fought." "No," Wu-Bin agreed. "We fought because they are our family, our species, our home. We fought because it was right," Mina added. "We fought because someone had to," Ho-Jin said. Han nodded. "We were already forgotten once when we disappeared into the wormhole. We accepted that we might never return, might never be remembered. But we kept fighting anyway. We kept surviving anyway, because that is what humans do." The lights on the bridge flickered one last time. The view screen went dark. The gentle hum of the reactor fell silent. Captain Han Sori looked at her crew, her family, her fellow survivors. They had crossed centuries together. They had faced nightmares together. Now they would rest together. "It was an honor," she said softly. 87 voices answered as one. "The honor was ours, Captain." No. The bike went dark. It did not explode. It did not break apart. It simply became still, all the impossible energies that had sustained it finally fading away. The ship drifted in orbit around Earth, a silent monument to sacrifice and courage. In the days that followed, humanity built a memorial station around the Baekdu. They preserved the ship exactly as it was, a tomb for the forgotten heroes who had saved their world. Pilgrims traveled from every nation to pay their respects. Children learned the names of every crew member. The ship became a symbol of everything humanity could achieve when pushed to its limits. And in the far reaches of space, word spread through the Kellan Dominion and beyond. Empires that had never heard of Earth learned about the ghost ship and its impossible crew. Conquerors who had never feared anything learned to fear the small blue planet, protected by the spirits of its children. The message was simple. Passed from star to star, across 3 galaxies, do not go to Earth. The humans there are protected by ghosts, and those ghosts do not forgive. Those ghosts do not forget. Those ghosts will find you no matter where you hide. Humanity survived. And in the silent darkness of orbit, 87 souls finally found peace, knowing that their family was safe forever. The battle had raged for 6 hours. The darkness of space was filled with burning wreckage and drifting bodies. Over 200 Kellan warships had been destroyed, crippled, or abandoned. The greatest fleet in 3 galaxies had been cut in half by a single enemy. Admiral Vorik transferred his flag to another ship after his flagship lost all power. He stood on the bridge of a heavy cruiser watching the carnage unfold. His 4 eyes were empty, his gray face frozen in disbelief. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked quietly. His tactical officer checked the readings with trembling hands. 287 combat-capable vessels, Admiral. Another 53 are damaged, but still able to withdraw. 340 ships remained from a fleet of 500, and the enemy vessel was still out there, still hunting, still destroying everything it touched. "Sir," one of his officers said carefully, "perhaps we should consider withdrawal. We can return with reinforcements. The Dominion has thousands of ships. We can know." Vorik's voice was hard. "We cannot run from a single enemy ship. If we retreat now, word will spread across the galaxy. Every conquered world will think the Kellan can be defeated. Rebellions will start everywhere. Our entire empire will be threatened." He turned to face his remaining fleet commanders on the communication screens. Their faces showed the same fear that filled his own heart, but they were still soldiers. They would follow orders. "Reorganize the fleet into attack groups of 20 ships each," Vorik commanded. "Coordinate your fire. Do not give the enemy space to maneuver. We will overwhelm it through concentrated assault." The Kellan fleet reformed. Smaller groups were easier to coordinate. 20 ships could focus their fire on a single point without getting in each other's way. It was a sound tactic against a normal enemy. On the Baekdu, Captain Han watched the enemy reorganize. Her crew had been fighting for 6 hours without rest. They were tired, but they had fought longer battles in the void. They had learned to push their bodies beyond normal limits. "They are adapting," Mina reported. "Smaller groups, coordinated attacks. They are trying to limit our dimensional movement." Han nodded. "It will not be enough, but we must be careful. The reactor is showing strain." Wu Bin's voice came from engineering. "Captain, we are at 70% efficiency. The void pocket is stable, but we cannot maintain full combat operations for more than another 5 hours. 5 hours. That was how long they had to destroy nearly 300 warships. Han calculated the numbers in her head. It was possible, but only if they took greater risks. "Ho Jin," she said, "prepare the Void Lance for extended use." Her weapons officer turned to look at her. Even his glowing eyes showed concern. Captain, extended use of the Void Lance will accelerate the reactor drain. We might not have enough power to, I know. Han's voice was calm. But we cannot let any of them escape. If even 10 ships return to report what happened here, the Kellen will send 1,000 more. They will use weapons we have not seen. They will not make the same mistakes twice. She looked around at her crew. 87 souls who had followed her through 3 centuries of horror. 87 people who had watched friends die, who had sacrificed pieces of their humanity to survive, who had become weapons themselves in order to protect each other. We have one chance to protect Earth forever, she said. One chance to make them so afraid that they will never return. We must take it, no one argued. No one questioned. They had been together too long for doubt. Era Sung opened a broadcast channel. Captain, I can transmit directly into the enemy ships. Every soldier in their fleet will hear you. Han smiled slightly. Good. Let them hear what is coming. She stepped forward, and her voice carried across the void. Kellen soldiers, your commanders have led you to death. Your empire has taught you that you are conquerors, that nothing can stand against you. You were wrong. The battle paused for a moment. Every Kellen soldier, every officer, every commander listened. We are the crew of the BIDO. We are humans who fell into the darkness between stars and learned to survive. We fought things that your nightmares cannot imagine. We killed creatures that existed before your species was born. And we came home to find you threatening our world. Han's voice grew colder. Some of you will die today. Most of you will die today. But I give you this choice. Those who shut down their weapons and surrender will be allowed to live. You will be prisoners, but you will survive. Those who continue to fight will be erased from existence. You will not die. You will simply cease to be. Forever. The transmission ended. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, across the Kellen fleet, lights began to flicker. Weapons powered down. Ships stopped moving. Admiral Vorik watched in horror as dozens of his vessels surrendered without a fight. Crews were abandoning their posts. Captains were ordering their weapons offline. His great fleet was collapsing from fear. Cowards, he screamed. Fire on any ship that surrenders. I will not tolerate. But his orders were lost in the chaos. The fleet's communication network was overwhelmed with voices. Some ships were trying to surrender. Others were trying to flee. Others were still following Vorik's orders to attack. The Baekdu moved through the confusion. Like a shark through bloody water, Ho-Jin fired the Void Lance again and again. Ships vanished from reality, leaving nothing behind. The weapon drained the reactor with each shot. But every shot removed another enemy from existence. Mina guided the ship through dimensional layers, appearing and disappearing across the battlefield. She moved them behind enemy lines, above their formation, below their defenses. The Kellen could not predict where the ghost ship would appear next. Wu then pushed the reactor beyond its limits. The void pocket was destabilizing, but he held it together through sheer will and knowledge that no engineer should possess. Strange energies crackled through the ship's systems. But they held. Era monitored everything, feeding information to her crewmates. She heard the Kellen screaming in fear. She heard their commanders losing control. She heard an empire's pride shattering. One by one, the attack groups fell apart. Ships that tried to coordinate their fire found themselves attacking empty space as the Baekdu shifted dimensions. Ships that tried to flee were crippled by precise shots to their engines. Ships that surrendered were left alone, drifting helplessly. After 8 hours of battle, the Kellen fleet was broken. Admiral Vorik stood alone on his bridge. Most of his officers had fled to escape pods. His ship was crippled, barely able to maintain life support. Through his view screen, he could see the wreckage of his armada spreading across space like a graveyard. A voice came through his communication system, Captain Han's voice. Admiral Vorik, your fleet is destroyed. Your soldiers are dead or surrendered. You have lost. Vorik's hands shook with rage and despair. You have won nothing. The Dominion will send more ships. We have millions of warships. We will burn your world to ash." There was a pause. Then Han spoke again, her voice almost gentle. "No, you won't." The Baekdu appeared directly in front of Warwick's ship. It was damaged now, its hull scarred and burned. But it was still there, still hunting. "We'll return to your dominion," Han continued. "You will tell them what happened here. You will tell them about the ghost ship that destroyed 500 warships. You will tell them about the humans who came from the void, and you will give them a warning." Warwick waited, his 4 eyes fixed on the enemy vessel. Earth is protected. Humanity is protected. If the Kellen ever return, if any force ever threatens our home again, we will come for them. We will find their homeworld. We will find their colonies, and we will erase them from existence, just as we erased your fleet. Han's voice hardened. "We are the forgotten children of Earth. We are the guardians in the darkness. And we do not show mercy to those who threaten our family." The communication ended. The Baekdu turned and moved slowly toward Earth. Leaving Vorik alone in the wreckage of his defeat, the Admiral sat in silence. Surrounded by the bodies of his crew and the ruins of his pride, he had conquered thousands of worlds. He had destroyed entire civilizations. Now he would carry a warning to the stars. Do not go to Earth. The humans there are protected by ghosts. The Baekdu moved through space like a ghost. Its engines made no sound, but they pushed the old ship faster than any human vessel had ever traveled. The hull, covered in strange markings, seemed to bend the light around it. Anyone watching would have felt something wrong, something that made their stomach turn and their mind hurt. Captain Han Suri stood perfectly still on her bridge. Her crew worked around her in silence. They did not need to speak. After 300 years together, they understood each other without words. On Earth, Admiral Jinde watched the approaching ship on his screens. He had read the old files about the Baekdu. He knew the names of every crew member who had been declared dead. Now he was looking at their ship, somehow still flying, somehow coming to save a world that had forgotten them. "Open a channel," Jin ordered. Lieutenant Tae Kim connected the communication link. The view screen flickered, and then Captain Han's face appeared. She looked young, maybe 40 years old, but her eyes were ancient. They held pain, wisdom, and something else that Jin could not name. Something that made him want to look away. "Captain," Han Jin said. "I am Admiral Jinde of Earth Defense Command. I need to understand what is happening. Your ship was lost in 2247. That was 312 years ago. How are you still alive?" Captain Han's expression did not change. "Time works differently where we traveled, Admiral. We entered the wormhole expecting to find new stars. Instead, we found something else. Dimensions that exist beside our own. Places where the rules of our universe do not apply." She paused, and something dark passed across her face. "We saw things that cannot be described. We fought creatures that should not exist. We lost crew members to horrors that would break your mind if I explained them. And we survived. We adapted. We learned..." Jin felt cold. "What did you learn?" "We learned how to become what we needed to be." Han's voice was flat without emotion. "We are not the same humans who left Earth 3 centuries ago, Admiral. We are something more. Something that the creatures of the void taught us to become." The silence that followed was heavy. Jin looked at his officers. They were all staring at the screen, their faces pale. "Can you fight them?" Jin finally asked. "The Kellen have 500 warships. You have 1 frigate that should be in a museum." Captain Han smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a wolf looking at sheep. "We can fight them." She turned to her crew. Jin could see them on the screen, men and women in worn uniforms, working at stations covered in technology he did not recognize. Some of them had strange marks on their skin, patterns that seemed to glow faintly. One man's eyes were not entirely human anymore. "Ho Jin," Captain Han called out. "Status of weapons." A young man looked up from his station. His eyes glowed with soft blue light, and thin lines of metal ran beneath the skin of his temples. He was the weapons officer, though Jin doubted any Earth weapon looked like what he was controlling. All systems ready, Captain. Primary and secondary batteries charged. The Void Lance is stable. Hojin's voice was calm, almost mechanical. We can begin whenever you command, Minahan said next. Navigation status. A woman turned from her console. She was small, with long black hair and eyes that seemed to look at something far away, something that was not in the room. Her hands moved across her controls without looking at them. I have plotted 17 approach vectors across 4-dimensional planes, Minayun said. The enemy fleet is positioned in standard siege formation. They have no experience fighting across multiple dimensions. They will not see us coming. Jin shook his head. I don't understand. What do you mean, multiple dimensions? Captain Han looked back at the screen. Admiral, the universe is not what you think it is. There are layers to reality that humanity never discovered. We fell into those layers. We learned to move through them. Our ship can be in more than one place at once. We can strike from angles that do not exist in your physics. She stepped closer to the view screen. The Kellen are powerful in this dimension, but they have never met anything from outside it. They have never fought ghosts. On the Baekdu's bridge, Chief Engineer Wu been called out from his station. He was a large man with tired eyes and hands covered in burned scars. He had kept the ship running for 3 centuries through impossible conditions. Captain, the reactor is stable. We are drawing power from the void pocket. We have enough energy for extended combat. Han nodded. Good, Ara. Open a broadcast channel. All frequencies. I want the enemy to hear us. Communications officer Ara Soon was young, with a sharp face and quick fingers. She had been 24 years old when the Baekdu left Earth. She was still 29 now, though centuries had passed. She adjusted her equipment and nodded.
Channel open, Captain.
Broadcasting on all known frequencies. Han stepped forward and spoke. Her voice was clear and strong. Kellen Fleet, this is Captain Han Suri of the human vessel Baekdu. You have come to destroy our home. You believe humanity is weak? You believe we have nothing left to fight with? She paused, letting her words sink in. You are wrong. We are humanity's forgotten children. We have traveled through darkness you cannot imagine. We have killed things that would make your gods weep. And we have come home to protect our people. Her voice dropped lower, colder. Leave now, and you will survive. Stay, and you will learn why the creatures of the void learn to fear human beings. The transmission ended. On his flagship, Admiral Vorik heard the message. His 4 eyes narrowed. Around him, his officers shifted nervously. The words of the human captain had disturbed them. There was something in her voice that did not match what they knew about this primitive species. But Vorik was old. He had conquered thousands of worlds. He did not believe in ghosts. Kill them, he ordered. Send 10 cruisers. Destroy that ship and bring me proof of its wreckage. 10 massive Kellen cruisers broke formation and moved toward the Baekdu. Each one was over 2 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could crack planets. Together, they had enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Baekdu continued forward, lone and small against the approaching giants. On Earth, billions of people watched through satellite feeds. They saw the tiny ship facing the enemy. They saw the 10 cruisers approaching. They held their breath. Captain Han watched the enemy approach. Her crew was ready. Their weapons were charged. The void reactor hummed with power from dimensions that had no name. Ho-Jin, she said quietly. Fire when ready. Ho-Jin's glowing eyes focused on his target. His hands moved across controls that responded to his thoughts. Firing. 1 beam of light shot from the Baekdu. 3 cruisers simply stopped existing. There was no explosion, no debris. They were there, and then they were not. The beam had erased them from reality itself. The other 7 cruisers tried to turn, tried to run. They did not make it. The Baekdu moved. It flickered, appearing behind the enemy ships, beside them, inside their formations. Weapons fired from angles that should have been impossible. Shields that could stop nuclear explosions failed against attacks that came from directions that did not exist in normal space. In 30 seconds, all 10 cruisers were gone. On his flagship, Admiral Vorik watched in silence. For the first time in 200 years, he felt something he had forgotten. Fear. The ghost ship was coming, and nothing in his fleet could stop it.